Good evening. It is Monday night, and that means it's time for the Monday Night Euro review show on the Anglo-Italian pod. As always, my name is Rory, and I'm joined by my very good friends
Adam and
Ben. How are we doing, everyone?
How we doing, boys? Good weekend, Ben? Not bad. 4-0 win. That's not bad.
Yeah, say that. It's better than 3-0, wasn't it? It was quality. It was it was a very good weekend. I was at Villa Park yesterday, and it felt big. It was good. Good weekend all round, except for a late Arsenal winner and a draw in the City Liverpool game, keeping you guys top of the league. But you know what? If you win 4-0, that can take that sour taste out of your mouth. So yeah, it was a good weekend all round.
Yeah, you can't have it all, mate. You can't have it
exactly,
all.
Exactly. It's been greedy.
Exactly. Adam, how we doing, man? Good weekend. Wycombe won against Reading, right?
we did, yes. I refer to it as the Medeski Stadium. Obviously, that's probably what most Reading fans would refer to it instead of the Die Young, killed a club kind of logo, whatever they've got going on down there. I do feel sorry for them. But yeah, great victory for us. So we're on to winning ways. And I think that builds us momentum going up to the Wembley game. So it's not far before we get to Wembley, mate. It's it's creeping up on us. But more importantly, mate, how are things in Milan?
All good, mainly, but, you know, breaking news, the Anglo-Italian pod curse has reached its way all the way down to League 2. Since I started saying that crew were going for the automatic promotion places, we've not won a game. We threw away a 2-0 lead at home, and we lost 2-0 away to Doncaster at the weekend. I sat and watched it on iFollow, because I definitely pay for iFollow, and it was absolutely brutal. The curse knows no ends, unfortunately. If there's a game out there, we can jinx it. It is a unique talent that we have on this pod. But this weekend, there's plenty of football, obviously. As Ben alluded to, we're going to be going to the Emirates to talk about Kai Havertz scores again. We're going to be talking about, of course, City versus Liverpool, the legacy of Pep and Klopp, and where we think the title race could go. We'll be talking about Spurs' incredible win at Villa Park and John McGinn's incredible head loss. And instead, we'll be talking about what we're going to talk about. De Versa has been sacked at Lecce. He's headed for the door. We'll be talking about Juve. We'll be talking about Inter a little bit. And we'll be talking about who else? Roma and Fiorentina, an incredible Sunday evening game there. So I suppose let's get it kicked off in the Premier League and let's talk about Klopp versus Pep. It was the finale, guys. 1-1. It kind of felt like it should have been 4-4, 5-5. I had to remind myself that there's only 2 goals in this game. Genuinely an incredible game, and I think a fitting end to what is this fixture between these two managers. It's always been a game that's like every time, even when Arsenal weren't involved in the title race, when we were mid-table, it was a game I sat down and watched and was like, I have to watch this game. It's appointment viewing. And Adam, it didn't disappoint, did it? It was full throttle, lots of chances, just incredible.
It was absolutely epic. If you kind of think about how it was built up and the way we kind of went about it, a lot of the action and anticipation was around what the key battles would be. And I think, you know what, it really lived up to expectation. I think if Darwin Núñez actually manages to keep on side for half of it, then it could be a very different game. But yeah, I think full credit to Liverpool, especially in that second half, the way they kind of came out of the blocks almost and put it to Man City. You can see the frustration by Pep on the sidelines. But yeah, I mean, it was a really good game to watch as a neutral. really opens it up in terms of the rest of the season. And I think everything was kind of built up as a lot of pressure on Liverpool. But now actually, I think the tides have turned. It's very much a lot of pressure on Man City, especially as they've got that Arsenal match in a few weeks' time, and as well as obviously Spurs as well, Ben. So you must be dreading yourself, right? But yeah, no, fantastic match. What was your kind of takeaways, Rory?
I thought I've not seen City on the ropes like that for a very long time, and it was a little bit encouraging. I thought the fact that Liverpool absolutely went for them, and obviously I'm coming at this from an Arsenal point of view. I don't know if we would be able to execute the same kind of game plan as Liverpool, because I don't think we have those players. I don't think we have that system. But seeing a team go at them and have them literally, City looked like they were running out the door with a point. They were just ready to take a point, go, and I've not seen many teams do that. So I thought that was fantastic to see. I thought that Liverpool with such a depleted squad, like Kwanzaa, who was playing League One Championship last year, now stepping in and playing alongside Van Dijk, doing an incredible job. Connor Bradley still looking insane. Like, just the level of performance that Klopp is getting out of these players is just incredible. But for City, and Ben, I'm going to go to you. They did have their moments, the first half particularly. It's kind of weird that they relied on a clever set piece to get the goal, right?
It was quite uncharacteristic from City, really. Like, for all of their quality, it was a clever set piece, but it was a little bit scruffy in the way that Stones bundled it in and Ake sort of got himself involved and moved the defender out of the way. And it was very well worked out. And you could see that they were sort of almost pointing to one of the set piece coaches on the bench, or one of the coaches who obviously sort of encouraged them and came up with the idea. But yeah, it was kind of uncharacteristic from City in that aspect. But they had their chances. Foden had a chance in the second half. Haaland obviously had that one-on-one opportunity. Van Dijk, I think, there's been a bit of a debate on that around, was that good defending, or did he just back off and show him onto his strong foot, and are we praising him because it's Van Dijk? But I think it's one of those ones where with Haaland, there's not really much else you can do other than back off and almost hope for the best. And it's almost like, has Van Dijk's aura got him out of trouble a little bit there? But Van Dijk was immense yesterday, I thought, to be fair. Again, I think he's really stepped up for Liverpool in these bigger games recently. Obviously, we talked about the League Cup final a few weeks back. But from a City perspective, I think in the first half, there was another chance with it was just their end product and their decision making in the final third was just strange. Like, they had that golden opportunity at 1-0 where they broke away Kyle Walker, and the weight of pass to De Bruyne at the back post was so poor. De Bruyne running onto it, he just flashed it across the goal. And that could have been 2-0, and that could have been a very different game going into half-time, even though I think the momentum did start to shift towards Liverpool after City went in front. They had a couple of chances on the counter-attack, but I think McAllister and Diaz had shots just wide. Bradley had an opportunity as well, or sort of a half chance. And I think that was when the tide started to turn. And going into half-time sort of encapsulated what you said about City at the end of the game, in the sense that they were lucky to get out of there with a point. And like you said, they were running away with it a little bit, like they couldn't believe it. And I think Liverpool just have this ability, like not many other teams have, to be super suffocating, and especially at Anfield. There's been a lot made about the sort of Anfield atmosphere and the fact that on your average game, it doesn't tend to live up to the hype. But I think in these games, they can really, really affect players. And I think it almost did get to City a little bit yesterday, because they weren't as composed as we've seen. And we know, obviously, I'm sure we'll talk about Klopp and Pep as a whole in a bit, but they've always struggled there, City. The only time they've won there was without fans in the stadium. And they've always had this sort of thing of going to Anfield. They've never been able to get over the line. We've had Mahrez missed penalties in the last minutes of the game. We have golden opportunities missed, or Liverpool have always had the upper hand in that fixture, even if it's not reflected necessarily in the scoreline. If it's a draw, they've always felt the team that have taken the game to City, and City don't look comfortable with it. And that was another example of that yesterday. But like you said at the start of the show, like for an Arsenal fan, it's kind of encouraging knowing that City do look vulnerable. City have always had like an element of vulnerability, even when they've been at their best, because you play that attacking based game, you're always going to leave chances. They've always done that. But the team selection, obviously, I don't know whether Diaz wasn't fully fit, but I thought that was a strange exclusion as well, and I think they didn't look as solid at the back. And obviously that was kind of epitomised by the Edison moment as well with the penalty. But I think Liverpool made City look average, I think, for large parts of the game.
I think the City fans were delighted to get out of there with a point. At the end, they were applauding the team and being like, "Thank God for that!" But we do. Liverpool fans and my cousin is going to be screaming at me because he sent me a tirade of WhatsApp messages the second the final whistle went. And Adam, I'm going to go to you. How was that not a penalty? They massively bottled that decision, right? Because if that's in the 33rd minute, that's a penalty all day long, right? It's the fact that it's the 97th minute. It's a title deciding moment. Nobody wants to step up and be the guy that makes that decision, right? And that's partly through the over scrutiny through the media, that anyone knows that if they make this decision, their life's going to be hell for the next 3 months on social media, right? Like, do you think that was just a massive bottling of making a decision moment?
I'm not going to say this to be controversial, by the way, before I say it, but I genuinely felt at the time they were looking at the body language of Doku for that very moment. So I thought that's what kind of spun it in the favour of Doku and Man City, in the sense that his eyes weren't necessarily fixated on Alexis McAllister as he kind of makes that running motion. And when you're on the football and you're keeping your eyes on the ball, you don't necessarily see where your foot is going, but he must have obviously seen the impacts eventually once it went through his chest and then down towards his thigh, obviously, at the time. So I think that kind of swayed it in the decision that it wasn't a penalty. But I could easily see that being given most weeks. That's the thing. And I think it is down to interpretations. I think obviously VAR also had a look at it and they kind of adjudged it as Alexis McAllister just running into Doku at that very moment, because it was kind of weird, wasn't it? Because Doku kind of let it bounce in front of him before he kind of puts his leg foot up. But I mean, there was lots of other incidents over the weekend that was just given as a pure red card for lesser things, I'd say. So yeah, I mean, Liverpool definitely have a cause for this, but you know, this is the kind of swings and roundabouts of refereeing decisions over the whole course of the season. But obviously, it's how critical this kind of plays a part in the title race now. And I'm sure Liverpool fans will be cursing if this really catches them out at the end. But yeah, that's my kind of take on it. I think it's just the motion of what Jeremy Doku is doing at the very moment. And he's not intentionally trying to injure McAllister in that moment.
Yeah, I think I can kind of see what I mean. I think they've taken there isn't an intention there, but I think if Arsenal don't get in the last minute, my head is hot afterwards. Like, Ben, how do you feel about that one? Because I think City fans, no wonder they were relieved when the final whistle went.
Yeah, I think they know they've got away with one there. For me, it's a clear penalty. I think McAllister actually gets there first, and I think the problem is that the thing that I struggle with is the logic of the decision, because you look at the amount of red cards where it's been deemed a red card for excessive force. You think of the Curtis Jones example against Tottenham where his studs go over the ball, but excuse me, it's then the contact with the other player on Basuma on that occasion. And it's weird that they don't apply the same sort of logic to this, because they say it does my head in, and it always sort of irritated me with that Jones example when people say that he got the ball. It's like, getting a touch on the ball doesn't mean winning it. Getting the ball means winning it. And Doku was never going to win that ball. McAllister just gets there first. Doku is always going to touch the ball because he's going for it, but his foot is basically on his chest. And then the follow through is there. And I think if they apply that logic to dangerous tackles and say, well, yeah, you might have got to the ball first, but you followed through and injured the player, then that's a red card. Then I really don't understand how this doesn't apply to this and make it a foul. And I think it's partly the occasion, and no one wants to be remembered for that. But I think you'll find more people saying that was clearly a penalty than not. Like, at the time I was watching it, and I was a bit unsure. It wasn't as obvious the first time around, and obviously that's where you kind of have to give the credit, the what's the phrase I'm looking for? The benefit of the doubt to the referee in that moment. It's not an easy decision to make, and like you said, the referees in this country are so under the microscope, it's untrue. But I just think that is what VAR is there for. Like, I just don't understand how we're not coming to the right decision in that aspect. And like you say, if that's your team, you are losing it after the game, because I just can't see any world in which if that's on the halfway line. I know we say this all the time about these sort of decisions, but if that's on the halfway line and it's a high foot, that's a free kick straight away, no questions asked, and nobody will say anything. But because it was a penalty and a massive moment between 2 out of the 3 teams going for the title, you know, a Liverpool win puts them top, but a City win puts them top, and it's all to play for. I think the occasion just got the better of the decision making in that instance, and I think they bottled it. And you know, I don't think it's a howler, but I just think I just can't, because I can kind of understand it, but I just think it's a penalty. I just think it's a pen all day.
Well, you're not the only one who's confused, because thank God Mike Dean was in the studio again as he came out with the immortal line, "Oh, that's a pen, definite pen." Nope, that's not a pen, as he heard the words from VAR in his ear and immediately switched. One of the many highlights of Mike Dean this weekend, if you did see him before the Crystal Palace game or during the Crystal Palace game, the referee signed an autograph. And Mike Dean, famously a shrinking violet, right? Famously doesn't like the attention. Mike Dean decided to have a go at the referee for signing an autograph. But on that moment made me burst out laughing on my sofa as I was watching that. But let's go back to the game. This is, of course, the last time that Klopp and Pep will meet in the Premier League. They shared a very long hug at the end. I would love to know what was whispered into each other's ears, as it was a very, very long hug. But Adam, I'm going to go to you first. When I think of these games, as I said at the top, they were always like appointment viewing, right? You had to sit and watch Man City, Liverpool. It was always two teams going hell for leather, just absolutely at each other. Completely different styles. You've got that calm, calculated mode of City against the desire for chaos of Liverpool, right? But when I think of these games, it's always two goal line clearances that come into my mind. There's a Kyle Walker one that is absolutely mental, and then a John Stones one that is even more mental. That both those things kind of swung the title race in the way of City. And these games always came down to absolutely huge moments, right?
Definitely, yeah. I think my kind of present moment about these two games, and I think it spins to the game where Sadio Mane gets sent off for a very similar kind of incident where his foot was definitely far from being to the levels of Doku, but still was quite atrocious at the time. But yeah, they've been kind of very ferociously fought, but well respected by both teams. I thought, they've got the passion for the actual games themselves, and there's not been a game where I feel like it's ever lacked in quality. It's always been really anticipated to be living up to expectations, and it's always delivered in that respect. So I think that plays a huge part. And I think just the fact that both managers have a huge respect for each other in terms of they're trying to outdo each other, but they appreciate what they've kind of achieved at both clubs as well. Because I think it's very easy to kind of write off Pep and say he's had the millions, etc. And, it's not as easy as a job as, say, Klopp. And that's always going to be the narrative from a Liverpool fan perspective. But I think it's just been how they've kind of taken it at both games, whether that be the Etihad or at Anfield. They've always lived up to that kind of hype. And, it's brilliant. Even when you look at this Liverpool side, that you could argue is depleted, hasn't got the same quality as they normally would kind of face up to each other. Those kids have really stood up and they've really made themselves counted. And I think that's all down to how Klopp's approached these games as well. He's given them the self-belief and he just knows it. Even when Ben alluded to Van Dijk in that 1-on-1, you saw how calm Van Dijk was at that very moment. He didn't rush, he didn't get rash. And I think that's the whole aspect of both of these games. They've always been quite calm affairs for both the sets of players. They've just taken it, but there's been a lot of chaos in between it. So it's been great that they've actually, I think if you compare it to some of the rivalry down the line, there's always been that kind of one team's been more defensive than the other, but both teams have always attacked each other. And that's been beautiful to watch as a neutral as well.
Yeah, well, it feels a million miles away from the Mourinho Benitez days, right? Of like every game being game being a 0-0. But Ben, your memories, your impressions of this rivalry, it's weird to look back on it now as it's kind of a finished, not quite finished, but it's almost a finished thing, right?
Yeah, it's interesting because I was watching Monday Night Football before we came on, and they were talking about essentially the sort of conversation around what's been a better rivalry of Klopp and Guardiola or Wenger and Ferguson. I think the Wenger and Ferguson one, like you sort of just alluded to there, there was a sign of the reason why that sort of ended in or felt like a more natural end is because both managers were coming to the end of their careers. Obviously, Ferguson retired before Wenger, and it just sort of felt like they were both on the same course. And obviously, Guardiola and Klopp, younger sort of managers in their kind of prime, really, it's taken sort of an unexpected end. And it's quite sad for the league, really, because I think, not to say that I think it's necessarily it's definitely not been a more heated rivalry than United Arsenal. That was a game that like you said, it's appointment viewing. You need to make sure you watch those games. There was always more needle in it. Like you think of the moments that game's had, but in terms of the quality, in terms of these two fixtures, it never, in terms of this fixture between these two teams, Liverpool and City under Pep and Klopp, it's just never ever let you down. And I actually quite like. I know can be deemed as cringy, and people have sort of just said that it's a bit of a love-in whenever they play each other. But I actually really like the respect that they've got for each other, Pep and Klopp. I'm
not about it at all.
Really, I don't mind it. But then it's because I think that when you're an Arsenal fan, so like you're in that rivalry of Man United, Arsenal, and don't get me wrong, like as a neutral, I love to watch two managers that have got this. There is respect there. There was respect there between Ferguson and Wenger, but there's more needle, and I love that. But I actually do quite like the Pep Klopp thing. Like they've clearly got this just like two. I'd say egos, but then they are egos, but egos in a different way. They've got their beliefs, they've got their way of playing. It's fascinating view whenever they play each other. They're both such interesting characters, and the football and the games, just like Adam said earlier, they never ever let you down. Like you said, I think that the game that stands out for me a lot is one of the ones that you alluded to with the Kyle Walker goal line, or John Stones goal line clearance, sorry, he had, where that was the first year that Liverpool challenged City properly. And I remember it was like a midweek game. City took the lead. Liverpool equalised. Had that one clear off the line, and then Sane belts one in off the post, and it just felt like this. It was, I think, it was in like January, so it wasn't even towards the end of the season. But it just felt like this is going to set up a mammoth title race between these two. Like it wasn't near the end of the season. It just felt like if this is what we got in store of these two battling it out week in, week out, and it felt like that game to me, like it maybe wasn't the best game, but that felt like the catalyst for everything else that was to come between the two teams. Another one that stands out is the one at Anfield where Liverpool beat them 3-0, I think, a couple of seasons after, and Guardiola with the twice when he was giving it to the fourth official, and they 3-1, I think it was in the end. I think Bernardo Silva got a goal.
Yeah.
But, that was the year that Liverpool won the league. The 2-2 a couple of years ago at Anfield where Salah scored that amazing.
It just kept going. It just kept going.
Unbelievable. And that, there's been some brilliant games. It's always better when it's at Anfield as well. Like, I know City haven't got a record there, but the occasion just feels, it feels
different.
like that classic Premier League fixture. Yeah. But it's going to be sad because the dynamic of this fixture next season is going to feel very, very different. And I think for the league, I think we're losing a big rivalry. That's something that's held the Premier League up over the last sort of 5 or 6 years. So it was kind of a bit of it was the end of an era really yesterday.
No, well, exactly. And they've delivered us the highest quality Premier League we've ever seen, like in terms of the quality of football. Like it has just been the highest quality. And thank God thank God for Jurgen Klopp, because without him, the Premier League would have been dead over the last 6-7 years, whatever it's been, because no one else was even close to it. But we're going to kind of leave that game there with a question from Matty Kushner. Thank you for getting involved, because it kind of leads us neatly on to our next topic, which is Arsenal 2, Brentford 1. Do you think Arsenal are on the level of Man City and Liverpool and are a real threat of winning the league? I'll take this one, guys. No, I'm very biased, obviously, and I'll let you two have your say as well. But I think we've scored the most goals, we've conceded the least goals, we have the most number of wins in the league at the moment. I think every number that we have shows that we are more than capable of keeping up with these teams. I think people are still sleeping on us, and that's fine. I don't think we will win the league. I think City will win the league. I still do. But I think we are every bit as good as Liverpool and Man City. And the football we've been playing recently, until Brentford turned up, has been the best in the league. I think we've been playing better than Man City and Liverpool. So I think it's nice for us for me to finally be able to say, you have to take us seriously. You have to take us seriously. And not just this year, I think over the next couple of years, because, as I said, I don't think it will happen this year. But Adam, I'm going to go to you first before I go to Ben, because maybe we'll get the other side of the coin from Ben. I don't know. Adam, what do you think?
I'd like to use this kind of analogy. I feel like Arsenal have kind of approached this as almost like a marathon rather than a sprint, right? And this season compared to last season, where I think it was roughly around this time, they were starting to puff a little bit more. Injuries were playing a part as well. Whereas this season, it just feels a bit different, doesn't it? It just feels like you've got the players that are doing the key kind of moments. They're driving the performances, likes of Declan Rice, which I think you were lacking last season, someone that can control that midfield. Jakub Kivor looking to be a bit more comfortable. I think that's always a positive, given Zinchenko kind of likes to go on his walkies sometimes and leaves that left back exposed quite a lot. But yeah, I feel like players are starting to contribute at the right moments. Like Kai Havertz has started to grow and develop as the season's gone on. So yeah, there's every attribute. I still feel there is the little underbelly under Arsenal that has that little moment. It's fair to say. Look, Ramsdale created that moment on Saturday.
We love shooting ourselves in the foot, by the way. We absolutely love it.
Exactly. And you know what? I still feel there'll be a bit of that from all teams, not just Arsenal. I think there's going to be an element of that with City and as well as Liverpool. But yeah, I think you've got every chance of doing it. I just feel like both Liverpool and Man City are probably just a little bit more quips. And I think the difference is just that quality strike up top, which might curse Arsenal. I know that's the area that we talked about in January, but this is the area that I feel like Arsenal are just missing out on. But let's kind of get the brutal kind of review from Ben now, being the Spurs
let's see. Let's see. I'm looking forward to this.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I'm far more. Well, it's tricky because I was going to say I'm more worried about Arsenal this season than last season. But last season you had the gap. You know, it felt just like horrible, sort of hoping every single week that you would drop points because there was so much ground to sort of claw to gain back from the other teams. But this year, I think it's really tricky when you've got three sides with, or at least two sides in Liverpool and Arsenal with great momentum. City have been a little bit more patchy recently, and you'd say that Liverpool have carried more of the wind out of that game yesterday than City have to sort of take into their next run of fixtures. But I think if you just isolate it in terms of this season, you forget what happened last year. Then I think or the years gone by in terms of the way that City and Liverpool sort of thrashed it out for the title. Arsenal are definitely on that level in terms of the way that you've been performing this season, the way you dominate and control games. It's just, I think, like Adam said, it's that lack of the ruthlessness in terms of that striker. But then when you can add so many goals from across the team, then that kind of counterbalances that to an extent. When you think of what Saka can do, when you think of Declan Rice popping up with another goal, obviously Kai Havertz kind of coming into his own. Arsenal just look like it's tricky because it's maybe that element of recency bias, because I would say that you look more solid than last year, but maybe that's not necessarily the case. Maybe it's just that last year you were like, it's tricky to say that, but I think the tangible difference is obviously the addition of Rice, which does naturally make you more solid. I think it's going to go very, very deep. I don't know who's going to win it. I think it's impossible to call at this moment. You would naturally edge it to City and Liverpool just because they've got the experience, and the know-how. But then again, like that, as Ten Hag once said, eras have to come to an end. But
everyone has to win it for the first time once, right? You have to win it for the first time. So I think stuff does happen. I think, look, we are more solid than we were last year, without a doubt. The fact that, like, last year wasn't sustainable. The emotional roller coaster that last year was not sustainable, and that's why it fell apart. So bringing in Declan Rice was massive. William Saliba playing the whole season is massive. The season that Ben White is having is just huge. Like, I think we are much more defensively solid, and it's just a lot calmer. And I think Arteta kind of said it before this season started. Like, look, last season we wish it ended better. We had a lot of fun, but this season we need to have less fun and a bit more control. He knew exactly what he wanted. So I think we've taken on a big step this year. I still think we've got some really, really tough games coming up, because we've got to visit Spurs, we've got to visit United, and we've got to visit City. So they're just three games that are constantly around here in my mind at the moment, just never far away from my thoughts. But I think we've never been in a better place, and this could come back and bite me in the arse. We've never been in a better place to go and win at the Etihad. I think this is the closest we've been to being able to do it. I'm not going to say we will do it, but it's the closest we've been for a while. So I believe more than I have done since they got took over, basically. I think was the last time I thought that we might do it. But let's talk about the game very quickly, because we've done a bit of Arsenal chat there, I suppose. But Kai Havertz is the hardest player in the league to mark. I think nobody can keep track of him. Ben, what have your impressions been of Kai Havertz? Because I think he's surprised me. I thought we'd play him in the number 8, but he's playing this number 8, number 9, number 10 hybrid, and I think people just can't keep track of him.
Yeah, I think that was one of the things that always stood out about Chelsea when he was at Chelsea. Was his movement and his technical quality as well. He's a very good footballer. I think just a lot of it just boils down to confidence, and I think you could almost sense that the scrutiny around that transfer and maybe the price tag kind of held heavy around his neck a bit towards the start of the season, because it felt like a transfer to the outside that naturally didn't make sense. But I saw someone on TikTok saying, and it's actually very true, that they said at the start of the season that this transfer is too weird for it to not make sense in the long run. And it kind of clicked to me. It was like, yeah, that's actually bang on. Like, it didn't sometimes these transfers that happen like that, and you don't never work out the way you expect them to. And I think with the way that Arteta has been able to get the levels out of the Arsenal squad that he has over the last couple of years, it was funny to jump on the bandwagon about Havertz and sort of, because there was a lot of scrutiny around him and it didn't feel like it made sense at the time. And the performances weren't there the first few months of the season, sloppy, like chances missed, like wasn't sure what his role was. It felt like Arsenal were almost shoehorning him into the side for the sake of it. But I think when you've got a manager like Arteta and as strong a structural setup at Arsenal as with like the likes of Edu and that in terms of the recruitment, I think Arsenal were always going to make it work. And that perceived shoehorning, I think, actually was just a slow, calculated figuring out of his best role. And I think, like you said, still very hard to pin down because what he does at Arsenal is quite hard to define. But when he's scoring goals every week, it becomes a lot easier to justify. But I think, like I said, I think at Chelsea, let's not get it twisted as well. Like, I think people's narratives around his time at Chelsea changed a lot when he moved to Arsenal, which I don't really understand because he was good at Chelsea. Like, I don't like he was a good player. Like, scored the winner in the Champions League final. I know that you know, fucking goalkeeper could score a winner in the Champions League final. It doesn't make a difference, but like he had that moment, and like you saw it a lot. And I think there's an element of I don't know. I was going to say recency bias, but that doesn't make sense. But like, there's just I think people were wanting it to fail. And that kind of clouded people's judgment. But and like I said, the performances weren't there at the start. But I think now you're seeing a much more confident player. Shouldn't have been on the pitch, by the way, to score that goal. I'm just going to leave that.
No, well, let's do this. Let's do this because I think the first booking wasn't a booking. I think the first booking wasn't a booking. That's a 50-50 all day. I don't think he jumps with his arms. I don't think that's a yellow.
Yeah.
Then we get to the second one. It's a massive dive. Of course, it's a dive. There is contact. There is contact. Nathan Collins throws his leg out, and that's stupid to do. But Havertz goes down very easily. Now, tell me the last time you remember a player being sent off in the Premier League on a second yellow for a dive.
Yves Bissouma this season. This is
why really?
This is it was against Luton. This is what.
Yeah.
This is why.
Okay, well, fair play.
This is why it's such a bugbear for me because it's like, well, how comes it's what That's but Bissouma got booked twice.
Okay, well, I stand corrected.
No, but like that was why it was frustrating because it was such a clear. I actually, to be fair, this isn't me just like copping out. I actually don't remember the first incident. But like you said, it probably was a bit soft. But that's what makes me annoyed about the Bissouma one is just that the common thing is, like you said, the fact that you couldn't remember it shows that it never happens. Like a player will not get booked, but it's like a second yellow for diving. But it was, that kind of shows in itself that he is, as much as it annoyed me, and then for him to go on and score the winner, it just shows you how hard he can be to sort of to pick up. And he's a very awkward player to play against. Like he doesn't, obviously he's playing up front for Arsenal technically, on the team sheet he'll be playing through the middle, but he doesn't. He floats, he drifts, he's quite elusive. I remember the game that stuck out to me where I thought things were turning for him. And I remember we did the pod after you lost to Villa away. And the amount of times he was playing in midfield, I think, in that game.
Yeah.
And the amount of times he was able to drift in the channel in behind Villa, that just shows you that movement is there. Like he's got that ability to sense danger, or not sense danger, read sense an opportunity rather. Yeah, like he's got that, and he's a clever player. I think it's just about confidence.
Yeah, well, it's if he can just get a little bit, and I'm saying this as he's on a scoring run, but he still lacks a bit of clinicalness in front of goal. There was one chance early on that he should have scored as well. But I think it's master deflection from Thomas Frank, honestly, because rather than him talking about a pretty poor performance from Brentford, I think, look, they defended relatively well, but they also ensured that the ball was only in play for about 50 minutes, I think. It was good practice for what Porto were about to turn up and do at the Emirates tomorrow night. I think we should be a little bit better at calming our head, but I thought Brentford have got this reputation as being, nice little Brentford, and then you play them and you're like, these are pricks. They're just really physical, slow down the game. I just really didn't enjoy it. But Adam, we need to talk about, I suppose, Ivan Toney getting sang at from the Arsenal fans. You'll never play for Arsenal. I really enjoyed. But there was a really big save from Ramsdale. Obviously, the talking point is the absolute clanger he dropped in the first half.
Of course it is.
It's probably Ramsdale's last game for Arsenal. I'm glad he managed to redeem himself in the second half. I really like him. But the debate for Raya versus Ramsdale is pretty much done now, right?
I think so. I think that performance kind of summed it up and justified what Arteta's been thinking, really, with Raya being brought in just to kind of add that competition. I think Ramsdale has this kind of almost too relaxed attitude sometimes, and that was evident by the Wissa goal as well. If you think about, like, for me, I want my goalkeeper just hit it. I don't care if it goes out. I just want him to get rid of it in those situations. I don't want him fanning about with it. Ben will laugh at the Max Strick incident, the Wickham goalkeeper against Barnsley, where he absolutely drops a clanger. And for that, I've kind of forgiven him because he's done some heroics since. But yeah, I feel with Ramsdale, unfortunately, this is going to stick with him. That kind of, he's too relaxed, or he loses his mind sometimes. He gets too bored easily.
It's concentration. It's concentration.
Out of it and all. And it's a shame because obviously he was building up kind of a good repertoire and reputation even for last season. So I do feel for the guy. But yeah, unfortunately, he's going to have to rebuild his career elsewhere. It's not going to be at Arsenal. And yeah, I don't necessarily believe Raya's even the answer, personally. I don't think he's that solid. Sometimes he can be a bit too quick with his distribution and maybe not aiming it in the right areas of the play, but he can be a little bit more agile with his feet. And I think that plays the part into Arteta's thinking. And I think also the other part is, when it comes to corners or set pieces, Raya comes out for it and he's a bit more kind of assured with that kind of catching element. And I think you saw Brentford really trying their best with that against Ramsdale. And yeah, I think it's always going to be a factor with Ramsdale. So yeah, such a shame. But unfortunately, yeah, that kind of game sums it up, Rory.
Yeah, I think with Raya, it's still hard to judge because without sounding cocky, we've protected him so well that he's not actually had that much to do. Over the last 7 or 8 games, he's not had a lot to do. The only goal that went in before this was another time when we shot ourselves in the foot, which was the Liverpool goal, right? So it's like, I'm still not convinced by his actual goalkeeping skills. His distribution, everything's fantastic. I love how he comes out and catches the ball. It really dominates his area, but I still think, if someone says to me, there's a shot from distance, who do you want saving it? I'm probably going to go for Aaron Ramsdale because I think he's a better shot stopper. But like you said, his concentration just isn't quite there. I hope he gets a great move. I hope we get great money for him. I hope it's not to one of our rivals. I would quite happily sell him abroad. Please don't sell him to anyone else in the Premier League. I don't want him popping up at Chelsea or something. But we're going to leave Arsenal there. My last sentence on this is going to be, Ben White needs to be in the England squad. Gareth Southgate, you just need to fucking figure it out. I don't care if he watches Love Island. That guy needs to be in the England squad. And we're going to move on to the story on everyone's lips. Spurs are coming for the title, Ben.
Yeah, we certainly are. We're not going away. We're definitely not going to win it, but you never know. We're going to have it. Well, we're not going to win it, but we're going to have a big say in where it goes. That's all I'm going to say. And whether you like to say that that's Spurs trying to keep themselves relevant or whatever, it's true. And like you said, there's teams that, as much as they might not like to admit it, they're not going to look forward to playing against us come the end of the season. We've got to play Arsenal, City, and Liverpool in the space of 3 games. Depending on some fixture changes as well, because City is still in the FA Cup and Chelsea is still in the FA Cup. We've still got to play them, so it's a bit of a mess. But that end of the season is going to look very, very big. But yeah, yesterday was, like I said, we're not in it, but that was a performance that showed that I think in years to come, I think we'll be not there or thereabouts in terms of challenging, but we're going to be an annoyance for a lot of teams. And I think that yesterday was a bit of a statement, I think. It was a massive game. John McGinn labelled it as Villa's biggest game in a decade, and poetic justice came to fruition, and there was a beautiful irony in that. Was just was brilliant. But Spurs were brilliant. I thought first half, Villa frustrated us. They changed from a 4 at the back to a 5 at the back to try and negate the threat of our wingers and the pace getting in behind. They dropped a lot deeper. They didn't play on the front foot. Their only real kind of out ball was that ball over the top to Watkins and Bailey, and they looked very toothless, Villa. They got in behind a couple of times, but Watkins had that chance where he squared it to Bailey, where I don't know why he didn't take it on and shoot, but he would have been offside anyway. I think Spurs held that line really, really well and looked comfortable for the most of the first half. I don't think there was a period in the game where Villa had any real momentum or control in it. I think Spurs, from the outset in the second half, dominated, especially considering the blow of Van der Ven going off and how that could have disrupted us and how forced to sort of change the way we play. But I thought Dragushin came on for his first real meaningful minutes and looked really solid. But going forward, it was just ruthless. And I think I was talking about Liverpool earlier, and I'm not saying we're anywhere near that level, but I think Tottenham are one of those few teams in the Premier League, and Arsenal and City are there as well. And I actually think that even Villa don't have this. I think Tottenham, Liverpool, City, and Arsenal stand alone in that ability to really suffocate teams and put teams under pressure for isolated spells in games. Tottenham, in the last few games, we haven't been, or the last sort of 5 or 6, we haven't been convincing for the whole 90 minutes, maybe other than yesterday. But we've had 10-minute spells against Brentford, against Brighton, against Crystal Palace last week, where we've just got too much for teams and really been able to sort of, when you've got your foot on their neck, so to speak, not let it go and not relent and sort of just make them crumble. And I think that's exactly what we did to Villa yesterday. There was a period between Van de Ven going off and John McGinn getting sent off where we scored those 2 first goals. And the first goal came about from a really nice piece of work down the channel. Porro, Sarr and Kulusevski linked up really well all afternoon, especially in that second half. Sarr had an unbelievable game before he was taken off. And I think there was a lot of Villa fans. And this has been a bit of a bugbear with me for Villa, because this has happened constantly as a Spurs fan throughout my life, especially recently when the whole Big Six has become more of a conversation. At any given opportunity when Spurs slip up and another team like Villa or Newcastle are sort of on the ascendancy, they like to think they've replaced us in this Big Six, and they like to think that they're miles better than us. Like you had it with Leicester.
To us with Leicester, and I was like, "Fuck off!"
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Like since I've been going to, like my first season was 2004, 2005, and we were crap. We finished like mid-table. Martin Jol came in, and the second half of the season was that sort of rebuild. From then on, from the following season where the whole lasagna gate, and we challenged you for Champions League. We've been there basically every single year for competing for Champions League, if not Europa League football. Like we're not going away, and I think yesterday was just a really satisfying victory in the sense that we showed Villa actually that we should have beaten Villa. We should have battered them at home. Like we should have done the double over them. We had 3 disallowed goals for offside. They affected that high line really well, but we were all over them, just missed chance after chance after chance. But yesterday, that ruthlessness, that clinical nature of Spurs came back. And, you know, the first goal, a magnificent cross from Sarr. Like I said, he had an unbelievable game. And I think that this kind of point I was getting at with Villa is that I tend to stray away from combined 11s when it comes to my TikTok, right? But I was like, you know what? This is quite an interesting tactical matchup with Villa Spurs. So I'm going to give it a go. And I got so much stick for putting Sarr in over McGinn or another Villa midfielder. I had Luiz in there, but I was like, you wait until you play against Pat Matasar. You might not see it just because he doesn't quite get the coverage or the spotlight over the course of a season. But when you play against him, you'll see how good he is. And he was fantastic yesterday. I genuinely think he's got the potential to go on and be like £100 million midfielder. He's got all of the facets. And then the second goal comes, relentless pressure, winning the ball back, slip through to Brennan Johnson. He's faced a lot of criticism. We've talked about this, but that was one of his best, probably his best game in a Spurs shirt. I don't really like him that much off the left, but he had Matty Cash on toast in that first half. He was the only real attacking outlet that managed to get any success for Spurs because they dropped deep and frustrated us. And then the third goal, the finish from Son is just a joke. And then Timo Werner gets in on the act. And I think it was just such a satisfying afternoon encapsulated by that McGinn moment, because that was just a sign of like frustration.
Yeah,
we're on top of you. They couldn't get a kick for that first 15 minutes in the second half, and I'm just going to lump you one. And he got what he deserved.
I thought it was quite funny when like a doggy got up and almost remembered that it hurt. He either remembered it hurt, or he thought if I go down, he'll get sent off. I don't know which one it was, but he kind of got up and then just like fell over. McGinn kicked him so hard, he did like 3 spins and then fell over. Like the biggest head loss I've seen from a player in a very long time. I always quite liked McGinn, but
me too. That's the thing. Like I really like him, but it was just like, and I didn't think he was that sort of player. But it was just,
I think he's got it in his locker a little bit every so often.
Scottish, isn't he? He's got it in him.
Just really got it in him. But I think because I turned the game on quickly and thought, oh, Spurs are 2-0 up, but you know, maybe they'll throw it away. And I put it on, and then I saw McGinn get sent off, and I was like, oh, fuck this. I'm watching Serie A. Like, this game's over now. Like, sod this. But Adam, Aston Villa's home form has completely deserted them. They've gone from a fortune. I'm quite annoyed about it, I'll be honest. We played them at exactly the wrong time of year, but their form has completely deserted them. They're still massively in the European race, but Emery needs to kind of turn this around. Is it just the European football playing at a weekend? Is that's taking its toll?
There's an element of that. I think prior to this game, though, Jacob Ramsey's missing. That injury was probably unexpected for them. So he's been one of those key players of recent. But the other thing was Boubacar Kamara. He's out for the rest of the season as well. So that's going to be a massive miss for them. And I feel like this was always going to happen when you have an over-reliance on Ollie Watkins being your kind of solitary striker as well, because John Duran has obviously struggled when he's not had a consistency of games. So, that impact sub hasn't been as evident throughout the whole of the season. And we know about Nicolo Zaniolo as well from his time in Italy. He needs a run of games. And unfortunately, he's showing the other side of his game where he's absolutely dreadful at the moment for Aston Villa. And he's not really contributing. And I think that's to the frustration of not just the Villa fans, it's also to the frustration of Unai Emery, because he wants his attacking players to contribute a lot more. And that over-reliance on Leon Bailey and Ollie Watkins means they're not able to kind of rest them, I feel. And that's the element that I think they're going to have to get used to. It's probably not going to be this season for them to kind of challenge in terms of that top four mix, I'd say. But I there's still kind of the kind of elements, I would say, that they can build from this. I think it needs another transfer window for them to kind of see the fruits of it. But Unai Emery knows what he's doing. He overthinks things as well. I think he probably overthought this approach as well. And I think, Postecoglou did really well with that high press in terms of, you saw it on Match of the Day, how they kind of approached it. And it was very evident that they kind of contained Villa. They struggled. And I think also John McGinn getting sent off was the big thing for Spurs in that result. I think him being off, he was kind of the catalyst. He made things happen in that midfield. If he's not playing on his A game, the rest kind of doesn't fall to plan. So that was a massive kind of piece of that game. And let's see what happens going forward. But I think they're just missing that kind of attacking outlet that can kind of freshen it up at times.
Yeah, the fact they're also missing Kamara as well for the rest of the season. I think the second McGinn is out of that midfield as well, it all starts falling apart, doesn't it? But we're going to have to leave that game there. I'm just very, very aware of time. I apologise. But elsewhere in the Premier League, very quickly, the relegation battle is getting very messy. Mateta with a hell of a finish, and Cauley Woodrow getting his first Premier League goal since, I think it's 10 years, when he also scored against Crystal Palace. Incredibly. Manchester United somehow won against Everton. The mind boggles. Sheffield United were 2-0 up and threw it away to 2-2 against Bournemouth. Wolves are back to winning ways with a 2-1 win over Fulham. And West Ham, oh my God, I thought Moyes was going to be fired, I'll be honest. But they managed to rescue it back to 2-2. Danny Ings getting a goal, the first goal in what feels like a very long time. And Adam, we very quickly wanted to talk about Brighton 1, Forest 0. Moder getting a goal, his first Premier. No, well, was it his goal?
He did kind of.
Goal,
Given us an own goal, though. Yeah.
But it wasn't the main talking point for Poland's exciting young player, right?
I wouldn't call him young anymore. But yeah. It was obviously his first game in a while, almost 2 years, I think, almost with that cruciate ligament. So obviously we knew what kind of player he was, came back into it. He looked quite comfortable. And obviously the incident in question is that kind of lunge that he made. Obviously prior to that kind of lunge, Morgan Gibbs-White has a little kick at him. So I feel that kind of winds him up a bit, makes him and do that tackle. And that's a red card every other day. I think that kind of piece should be called out. But I think the element is for Nuno Espirito Santo is about the element that they're getting decisions like this against them every week, it feels. And they don't know yet this kind of piece around the points deduction until the end of the season. So this could be massive in terms of their survival if that kind of goes against them, this particular result, because Brighton really did struggle. They've not been great in terms of that form. We know De Zerbi normally likes to play either really extreme football, but this was much more pragmatic in terms of the style. Probably we wouldn't see this in Serie A, let's put it that way. So he was a lot more pragmatic, got the results. That was really important for Brighton and builds momentum going forward, because I think they've been falling off of late. They've been really struggling. And, the Matoma injury in particular, I think killed him off a bit because he's out for the rest of the season. So, there's a few players obviously coming back in Zizou. He's starting to get that momentum that he showed at the end of last season as well. So, there's some promising signs for Brighton. But this could be a decision that goes against Forest in the grand scheme of things, because a lot of those kind of teams like you alluded to, your Lutons, etc., starting to pick up points. I mean, was that the first weekend that all of the bottom three got a point? I think it is.
And some of them were very, very close. As we said, some of them were very close. Everton are very relieved. Their fans are very, very relieved, I think. But yes, we're going to leave the Premier League there and we need to go to Serie A. And we're starting at the bottom of the table, guys. It's where all the excitement is with Serie A as Lecce head downwards as Diversa. Well, it all kicked off. This game was very, very tense. There was zero quality. The only goal came through a massive deflection from Folorunsho, who's still continuing to have a very, very good season. Very, very lucky goal, but they all count. And the only talking point here really is Thomas Henry, who is a favourite of the show, comes on later on in the game. I think his only job really was to cause chaos. All he did was come on and just piss people off, just get in the way. He's a big bloke. And he just went around, muscled people around, gave people a few kicks. The final whistle goes, and Adam, just a huge melee. Manager kind of leans in, but then just throws his head on him. And that's his last action as Lecce manager, right?
It is, yeah. I think we spoke offline. It feels like that was the easy option for the Lecce boards to make, really, to be honest. You have to kind of see it in the grand scheme of things. Lecce really have struggled in the second half of this season. We spoke about the only win of this year has been against Fiorentina, where they won 2-1.
Of course.
And yeah, that was on the 2nd or 3rd of February. And prior to that, we're kind of looking as far back as December the 16th, where they took on Frosinone and won 2-1 that time. I felt Lecce, since that kind of January transfer move where they got rid of Strefezza, was a massive gamble in that respect. And Roberto De Versa, we were kind of lauding him up at the beginning of the season. You know, Lecce were in 4th spot at one point in the league. But yeah, unfortunately, look, it's all spiraled out of control. They've lost their momentum and they looked toothless in this match. They looked absolutely horrendous. And Hellas Verona fully deserved this victory. They're building this kind of, I don't know how you describe it, but we always say they're going to get relegated every season, and then they pull off this kind of second half revival, and this with a brand new squad virtually as well, Rory. But yeah, Roberto De Versa, I think the writing was on the wall. It'll be interesting to see how they go about replacing him, because they got a massive game at the weekend against Salernitana, rock bottom Salernitana, who are just as bad as them at this moment in time. And yeah, I mean, it needs a new manager bounce, that's for sure, for Lecce. They need someone in, because everyone around them has pretty much replaced their managers now. Sassuolo picks up a point as well. So yeah, we've been waiting, like you say, Rory.
We waited a long time for a manager sacking, and they all came at once, and everyone at the bottom just absolutely shat their pants and sacked everyone. I as I said, I watched this game because I like to torture myself with watching relegation battles. There was just zero creativity for Lecce. Like you said, I think if the only player, like everything went through Banda, who's a very exciting player, great, like dribbly boy, manages to get the ball, very exciting, very active. End product isn't great, but even when he did get that end product, there was no one there to get that finishing touch. Kustovic is a player who we've been very excited about, just did not have the composure that was needed at the weekend. And for Verona, it's mad. They sold 14 players in January, right? They sold their entire team, brought in a whole new team, basically. And not only is it going better, they look like a team. They know what everybody's job is. They're just completely calm throughout this game, even though it was 1-0, apart from the last 5 minutes when Thomas Henry decided to stir things up. It was pretty comfortable. Like, there was never any like heart in mouth moments. I think obviously the fact they've got Montipo in goal, towards the end of the first half, I think he made some big saves. And of course, that does help. And we've talked about the fact that having a great goalkeeper is such like an underrated thing. Like when I play Football Manager, one of the first things I do is go out and buy a very good goalkeeper, because it just means you will automatically just be a bit more secure. And I think Verona, of the teams around them, they have the best goalkeeper, and that's a great place to start. Then you've got that midfield, and the two centre-backs over the weekend, they were just so solid. They were heading everything away, and they just looked completely comfortable. So I think Verona have just managed to... It was a risk. It was a massive roll of the dice, like selling all those players and signing all those players. But for now, the gamble seems to be working. It was the centre-backs. I just wanted to get Coppola and Magnani at the back were just absolutely fantastic. And I think this roll of the dice is kind of kind of pulling off. But the thing we need to think about now is Lecce. We don't know who the manager is going to be. We don't know who can come in. Ballardini and Davide Nicola are already employed. So the survival specialists are kind of taken. I'm not sure who Lecce go for, but they're talking already now about, well, we'll get someone after the international break. It'll be like, and they've already, there's a few games or at least one game before that. They've done this quite hot-headedly and clearly didn't have a plan before, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think they used this opportunity just to get rid of him. In terms of foresight now, like you say, the speculation for me and from what I can see is Gattuso. He's going to be the hothead that could potentially just instill some kind of confidence and just get some fighting into that squad. I feel it's just a lack of quality personally, though, Rory. I think they are just lacking a few of the quality players. I mean, look, Almqvist, I think, has been really great player since they brought him in the summer. But yeah, they need to rely on a lot more than just Almqvist for them to stay up. And yeah, the only other kind of candidate that springs to mind is Paolo Zanetti, who was obviously previously of Empoli, will instill that kind of good style of football as well. And he'd probably be a good fit for them. The only other one that I kind of speculated personally would be the return of Antonio Conte to his birthplace.
I'll tell you what, if they could afford him,
that would be incredible.
I would love to see that. He's never, did he manage Lecce? I think he might have. No, he managed Bari.
Not managed.
Which is really weird.
No, yeah. No.
He managed Bari and they famously don't like each other. But yeah, I tell you what, that is, if we could write the Serie A script and have a say, and if I had the money, I would pay for Lecce to have Conte for the end of the season, because that would be absolutely box office. It might get even more. He's definitely going to headbutt someone, right? That's definitely going to happen. But, the relegation battle, guys, in Serie A is 13th and 19th are currently separated by 4 points because Udinese, touch wood, are currently winning in Rome against Lazio. It's the 85th minute.
It'll end up as a draw.
We know it's going to be a draw. That's what happens. But this relegation battle is an absolute all-timer. In this relegation battle, also, Sassuolo picked up their first win in a very long time, their first win under Ballardini, and a huge performance and goal from Torstved. It was a beautiful finish, the spin and smash into the net. Absolutely incredible. But a huge, huge win for them, Adam, because I've done my projection. I didn't have them winning a single game, so I've already been proven wrong.
Yes, this is very true. I was pretty much in the same boat. I pretty much had Sassuolo to finish after Salernitana as it currently stands anyway. But yeah, they were clinging on, it's fair to say. I mean, despite the fact that they played better than they have done of recent weeks, because they would have probably conceded 4-5 by this point with Dionis in charge. But yeah, Frosinone were very unlucky as well, it's fair to say, because they had a penalty initially given, but then ruled off because it was a judge that he took a dive. And then when they eventually did get a penalty, the striker, I've forgotten his name.
Jorge on loan from Juve.
Yeah, he misses it by an absolute mile, unfortunately. He just goes wide with his shot. And that kills it for Frosinone. I do fear for Eusebio Di Francesco, it's fair to say, Rory, because he seems to go through these little spits and spurts of form, doesn't he? He kind of manages to rescue the situation and then they're back in it. I still think they've got enough quality within the squad, though, because if you've got players like Matteo Sule, I mean, that's the thing. Marcella as well. It's just incredible how they've gone about it. I did feel Frosinone would struggle without that kind of experienced core of players for Serie A. But yeah, let's wait and see. I think just on the balance of things, and also I feel like they've got some important fixtures in the next few weeks. If they can win those kind of big 6-pointers, then they'll stay up. But Rory, we know it's not that straightforward, unfortunately.
No, well, exactly. I think they play the most teams around them, around the league. I think they play 5 of the teams around them, and Lecce play 6, but they've just played one of them. So yeah, there's all these teams are playing each other. Incredible. And the last game down here was Cagliari 4, Salernitana 2.
Wow,
this game was absolute chaos. Lapadula's goal was really beautiful. The dribbling and attacking on the line. And Shomurodov, everybody's favorite Uzbek, gets 2 goals. The last goal in particular was absolutely beautiful. Sassuolo did look alive for a bit, but not for long. We are going to do a deep dive into the relegation battle on our Friday pod. I think we're going to take a bit of a look at it and see where we think this will go. But as we're aware of time, we're going to head back up towards the top of the table. I think we're ready to go towards the
let's
top.
do that.
Let's do it, and let's talk about Juve Atalanta. Juve looked like they'd stolen it in a 3-minute spell, but Koopmeiners, seemingly the only player who can score for Atalanta at the moment, manages to get 2 goals. Ben, did you see this? It looked like Juve were going to pull themselves out of trouble. Milik getting a goal, Chiesa looking angry and determined. It was looking fairly encouraging.
Yeah, Juventus have been so kind of inconsistent or uninspiring as of late, and it sort of felt like they turned a little bit of a corner in a game that, against a side in Atalanta who have been very impressive this year. It felt like a significant victory, but it wasn't to be. And like you said, Koopmeiners again for Atalanta seems like one of the only players at the moment that can sort of stand up. It feels like it's him every single week that's getting them out of trouble or providing that moment of quality. But yeah, Juve just, it's kind of been a little bit symptomatic of their season, really. When you look at, I think the pressure, obviously the title feels like it's definitely gone now, but it's almost just like the defeatist nature of the fact they're looking at Inter every single week, and Inter being able to get these 1-0 wins or see these games out or make it really comfortable. And I think that's playing on their mind to an extent. Even now, when it feels like the title is gone, I think they've just lost that element of belief. And obviously, it was a brilliant goal that put Atalanta 1-0 up. But Juve, they showed that bit of response in the second half. Like you're still kind of wanting more from Chiesa, but you started to see that. But it just feels like it's not necessarily. It's still not clicked. It's still not properly right there for Juve yet. And it just feels like this season is almost gonna just pale out into just insignificance, really, which is, it's a bit of a shame. You kind of want that excitement at the top of the table in that title race for the rest of the year, but that's just not. It's just not going to happen. But it just, it felt like a promising. It felt promising for them, but it just, again, they just kind of let themselves down a little bit. Juve, really.
Yeah, they were just so open at the back towards the end. I feel like they got caught up in the emotion of the kind of, we've turned this around, right, let's go. And they just forgot themselves. I think, look, they're now down in 3rd place. So they're like going to finish 3rd in a 2-horse race somehow, because Milan have somehow overtaken them. But Adam, we do need to give them some credit. Beautiful goal by Cambiasso. I thought that was a really nice move, really well taken goal. And Milik, it's been a while since he got a goal, but that's a big, big moment for him.
Massive moment when you consider the context of what he could be remembered for the rest of this season as being the guy that's probably screwed up their credentials of being in top 2 at least. But yeah, a really important goal for him, and that will still give him a lot of confidence going forward. But I think we have to also highlight, and I think Francesca will not be happy if we don't mention it, but Weston McKennie, his form for Juventus of late has been absolutely amazing. He definitely laid off all the Yorkshire pies and Yorkshire puddings when he was back at Turin, wasn't he? So, I mean, he just looks a shadow of that kind of Leeds Weston McKennie. He looks like he's more hungry, got a lot more running in him, and he's adding a lot more quality to his game. That assist to Milik as well, that was just him improvising in that very moment. And, he's starting to pull the strings. He's starting to make me kind of doubt whether actually there is a good player under that kind of belly. Like at the moment, it's really weird because I didn't really see it happening, especially when you think Juventus were keen to get rid of him almost 2 seasons ago. They were happy to let him go, and they were trying to shift him for at least 30 million at the time. So he's just rejuvenated under Allegri of all people. And, you've got to give some credit to Allegri in that respect, that he's managed to work with these set of players and get a performance out of them. But at the same time, credit to Weston McKennie in the way he's gone about it. But Juventus fans are probably really frustrated at the way they're playing at the moment. That's another game that they've chucked away against Atalanta, who haven't been great of late, it's fair to say. They haven't been brilliant. And yes, we can kind of mock the fact that Koopmeiners is a target for Juventus, ironically, and he scores goals. But yeah, a lot of kind of soul searching needs to be done, because they've now let the impetus go to Milan. Milan are now ahead of them. And I know it's only by a few points when we're talking about it in the grand scheme of things, but that's going to be very difficult to turn around. And they've got actually a game coming up soon against Milan. So that's going to be an interesting kind of setup for that match. So yeah, Allegri is going to have to rely on those kind of key players being fit for him. I think that's going to be important. And we need to see Vlahovic being a bit more clinical. That's the key, I think.
The alarming thing for me is just the shift since they lost that game against Inter. I think there's a lot of like the mental state of the team has just been really disappointing. Like rather than them being like, because at that point it was very, very close, right? Inter like that was the game that decided the title, right? If Juve won that, it turns the tide and it gets. But the fact they didn't do it, and since they've just been so uninspiring and almost thrown the towel in, I think it's quite worrying about the state of the players and what it says about this squad. And going into next season, do they go again? Can they go again? They're going to have European football. Can they sustain a title challenge and European football? Because they've not been able to do it, and this was their easy season, right? So I think no matter what happens, for Juve to be challenging again next year, they need a lot of improvement. They need, like, Weston McKennie has been fantastic, but he's still not quite done it long term, right? We'll be keen to see if he can continue it into another season. Like players like Rabiot probably aren't going to be around, right? It's looking like he's going to go. Like Kostic has been a massive disappointment. You've got like the squad needs a bit of a revamp, and they've got no money. So I wonder how they do it. So I think for Juve fans, it must be concerning just how easily the players have thrown in the towel, because I was talking to an Inter fan friend today, and I hope I don't jinx it, so like touch wood, but he was saying he's bored now. He just wants the season to end so they can lift the trophy and we can have the party, because like he wanted a title challenge, right? He wanted, he's like, it's kind of taking a bit of the excitement away, to be honest, because you're just like, okay, wait until the 5th of May or whatever, and then we can have a party. Like, and again, touch wood, I hope nothing goes wrong, but it feels like Juve have just massively let themselves down the second they lost that Inter game. And it was so close. It was an own goal. It was decided 1-0. It was like, these are the butterfly effects of football. But I just think it says a lot about the mental state of the Juve players. So very, very disappointing. Well, not for us, but very disappointing for Juve fans and players, I suppose. But the good news is Allegri looks like he could be renewing his contract. So, more fun from here. For Atalanta, we do need to very quickly talk about Atalanta. They've been on a horrible run. They've had a horrible run of fixtures. That does need to be said. We've said it every show, but they've currently, in their last games, they've played Juve, Bologna, Inter, Milan, right? This is a rough run of games. This is a big point for them. This is a massive point for them. Any team getting a point in Turin, like within Serie A, means a lot because of the history and everything of Juventus. It's just like, okay, we didn't get beat. That's fantastic. Can Atalanta kick on now? They've got this game against Sporting at home midweek. That's currently 1-1. And then they've got Fiorentina at home and Napoli away. It just doesn't get any easier. Is this going to be a boost for them? What do you think, Adam?
Yeah, they had to get through this patch of fixtures, right? We knew it was going to be a really tough one for them. And yeah, they probably have to just see these next few games out. And because after that, then in theory, it's easier games against the likes of Monza, for example. Hellas Verona is one of them. And I think sometimes we also forget is, Atalanta aren't necessarily a big club. They're just almost like a town club, aren't they, really, in Bergamo? And, they've over-exceeded in terms of expectations. I think Gasperini and that whole kind of setup has kind of allowed them to be kind of mixing it in with the big clubs in Italy. And I think sometimes that gets forgotten about. So they are massively overachieving in terms of where they should be and in terms of that kind of wealth as well, because they're far, like I would say, poorer in relation to the likes of Milan and Inter in that respect. So for them to be pushing these kind of teams is massive, and a lot of credit goes to Gasperini and his kind of coaching there. But yeah, this is going to be an interesting period because not only have you got themselves, you've got Bologna in that mix, you've got Roma who are starting to pick up some form. Obviously, we would have probably mentioned Fiorentina up until yesterday because they just really showed themselves up. Maybe Lazio, but it depends on tonight's results. So, look, it's going to be exciting, especially for that top 6 mix. I think it's going to be changing every week. I think the momentum's with Bologna, personally, for the 4th place spot. And then it's between potentially Atalanta and Roma. But don't write off Roma at this moment in time. I thought I was prepared to write them off after yesterday, but they kind of showed me up when they scored that late equalizer with Loriente. So, Yeah,
Yeah,
a lot of hope though.
The group chat was pretty brutal on Roma last night, and I wasn't saying anything. I was like, I'm not going to say anything because I think they're going to do something here. But people were getting, they did look pretty terrible for a while. It is, oh no, Udinese, what have you done? It's 2-1 to Udinese still, but they've just had Nehuén Perez sent off in the 94th minute. There are 5 minutes left to play. Udinese, don't do it like this. Don't go out like this. You have to get the win, guys. You can't draw another game. I'm going to keep an eye on that while we're talking, but let's move on to, we were talking about them, so let's talk about Roma Fiorentina. I really enjoyed this as a game. I thought this was a fantastic game. But is this game the story of Vincenzo Italiano? We're going to talk about this, but Ben, did you see the goal from Llorente at the end? I've seen a few more violent strikes, but not many. He absolutely wellies it.
Yeah, you'd love to see that. There was a goal for it was for West Brom yesterday. Did you see that where it fell to the edge of the box and just the anger that he put through it was just that? And this was the same from Llorente. Also, where it's so much more satisfying as well when it goes in off the bar. It was such a ridiculous finish. But yeah, just ridiculous. There's so much power. Like there's almost like it's one of those things where I know he's got someone closing him down, but there's almost like no need to strike it with that much power from that close. But he just does it and just like he hits it in anger. It was such a brilliant goal.
I absolutely love the head down from Indica as well. I think it is a beautiful head down, just perfect placement. Yeah. And I have to say, there was a cross from Angelino in this game with the outside of his foot. I think it set up the Aouar goal. Oh my God.
Goal, yeah.
It was one of the best crosses I've ever seen in my life. It was insane. You have to look it out. Just outside of the foot. I forgot he was at Roma, honestly, but what a cross. But Adam, let's talk about Italiano and Fiorentina. Mm-hmm. They just can't see games out. They just can't get over the line. This is the story of their season, right?
Yeah, if you look at that kind of first half, they absolutely dominated Roma. They wound up Mancini, who had to be substituted off for Huijsen. I think he was lucky to be substituted. I think the referee has every right to send him off for the amount of times he was winding them up and like getting away with really silly, stupid fouls as well. And that was a clever bit of like thinking from De Rossi as well, because I mean, had that gone down to 10 men, I think that's a different game, and I think Fiorentina see out. But to Fiorentina, this has been their story all season. They have good games, they have poor games, they're inconsistent. They can't see it through. They cannot take their chances. And I really felt sorry for them because, you know, we had some amazing performances on the night. That, you know, the likes of Sutil had an incredible game for them. Even Belotti against his parent club, he just... It was written almost as a script. It was almost
when
like
he went down for that penalty.
Should have done.
I was
this
like, you
Roma.
can't go back to Rome. It was insane.
Yeah, exactly. Imagine if he took it, right? I mean, this is the thing. If he'd taken it and scored, that would have been a hell of a story. But yeah, I mean, he really works really hard. And you look at the kind of, I feel the element is at the back for Fiorentina. They really do struggle. Look, they kind of have this kind of attacking philosophy with the wing backs, you know. It's sometimes Chiode, sometimes it's Biraghi on that left-hand side. Biraghi had a good game again. But it's that kind of centre-back pairing. They can never kind of work it out. And Ranieri, although he scored the goal, the first one, he was shaky at times. And that was the inevitable thing that kind of almost the pressure killed him off. Terracciano had a good game in goal, but he wasn't going to do anything with either of those efforts from Roma. So Fiorentina, again, disappointing. And that's going to kill them off in terms of their chances of being in that kind of top 5, top 6 conversation. And I know we'll probably have Andrea on the show again, because he's just getting really to that point of depressive mode now, because it's incredible. Incredible the kind of emotions he has to go through every week with Italiano. Some weeks I think Italiano's not the man, and then yesterday he kind of showed there is an element under him, there is something about him. But yeah, I just feel like he's never really progressed as a coach. It almost feels like there's something he's lacking, and it's almost seeing these games through at the moment. What about you, Roy? Where do you see Italiano in the grand scheme of things?
His stock has dropped in this country so quickly. Like, he was like, honestly, I think this job, he's not coming out well from it. And it's interesting because obviously he got into the Conference League final last year, and that could have gone either way. Like, you know what I mean? It was a very close game. Yeah. The legacy and the opinion changes completely. But this season has been particularly disappointing for them. I think, his inability to affect gains, and I think the substitutions didn't help. I felt like he was trying to hold on to the game too early and then just let Roma bring the pressure on, just inviting more pressure on. I think it was a little bit like Roma were there for the taking. I think he could have gone to try and get it. Obviously, if the penalty goes in, it's 3-1, right? It's a decent save from Svilar. It's a pretty terrible penalty, but it's a decent save. If that goes in, it's a different game, but I feel like he conceded it a little bit too early. And with Roma, one thing we've seen, I'm going to switch to Roma, but with Roma, one thing we've seen with De Rossi, and I watched a press conference with him in Italian today, so I was practicing my Italian. I was like, right, let's try and understand the Roman accent and see if I can decipher what the hell he's talking about. And I think I got it. But he was talking about, and what I like is he's very upfront, and he was talking about Mancini, and he said, yeah, I've got to take him off. I had to take him off because we know that he's he was going to get sent off if he was on much longer. But then he said the thing of if you take this out of his game, you take away so much, and he kind of was a bit more diplomatic about it. But he turned around and said, we need to be better. We've played, I think he said 4 or 5 halves of pretty terrible football now. And what we need to do is find good football because these moments aren't going to keep coming. And he was just really upfront about it and was like, we need to be better. I'll take the point. But the guys know that we need to play better than we did. But what we do know from Roma under him is that they are going to keep fighting. They're not going to stop until that final whistle. And I was really impressed at how they did keep going. And I was impressed that they didn't, even though the goal did come from a cross into the box, they didn't just start pumping it into the box. They still were kind of sticking with what their idea was, sticking with their plan. And just it came off in the end. I think Lukaku was particularly quiet. It wasn't a particularly impressive game from him. But players like Angelino, Pellegrini, when he came on, I think he made such a big difference. Dybala, when he came on, of course, made a huge difference. I think they've just got quite a lot of exciting players in that team that will deliver you moments like that. So I think De Rossi is kind of leaning on that a bit at the moment. But I'm really excited about him as a manager. Genuinely, I know it has been an easy-ish run of games, and the difficult games that he's had, he hasn't won, right? He lost to Inter, but everybody loses to Inter, and he didn't beat Fiorentina, right? These are the 2 tricky games he's had. But I think we've seen him instill a system and attacking football quite quickly. The players clearly like him. I think tactically he's very aware. I think he's not stupid. He really knows what's going on. I think it's just another impressive match from him, even if Roma weren't that impressive. And again, I think the decision to replace Patricio with Svilar, I was saying it in the group chat last night, it's just huge. It's absolutely huge. Massive. And again, in the press conference, he came out and talked about it and was like, it's a decision I made. It's a decision I stick with. And the performances that Svilar's put in shows that he deserves to be there. And that is he's turned into a bit of a penalty specialist. He saves a few in the Europa League against Feyenoord, right?
Yeah.
He saved one again last night, and I think he's just been Roma looked so much more solid, despite the fact they conceded 2 last night. They look so much more solid at the back with him there. I think Rui Patricio at times, in the early days of the pod, we used to joke about with Handanovic, you could just kind of hang a broom in the net and probably do the same job. And I feel like at times Patricio was kind of in that zone. So yeah, really impressed with Svilar, and I always loved De Rossi, but I'm just really happy to see him doing well, and Roma can hopefully kick on. This does put them a point ahead of Atalanta, as we did say, in the race for the European spots. I think, guys, Udinese have won. They've done it.
Wow.
2-1. 2-1 in Rome. That is absolutely
That's impressive.
Huge. That is massive. So that now puts Udinese up in 13th on 27 points. And widens the gap from 13th to 18th to 3 points. Oh my God, it is so tight down there. That is a huge win. Honestly, every time I look at it, Ben, it gets closer. It's insane.
That's mental. I mean, we've had, you think in the Prem, we've had close battles, but never this close. It's always congested right at the bottom, and it's just a point in it, or no point separate. It's just that is mental.
It blows. Honestly, I'm so excited to see where this race goes because I've no idea how it's going to end. Right. All the teams are playing each other as well. There's so many big weekends coming up. I cannot wait. But Adam, elsewhere in Serie A, what game do we need to talk about that we didn't cover? Milan Empoli? Not really.
Not really. No, but I was going to say before we kind of end it, the Danny Motta goal against Genoa. If you haven't seen it, please do go watch it because Calpani kind of puts it on there for Danny Motta to do this extravagant, even should I say, bicycle kick from the edge of the area. And what a take. Is absolutely amazing. So if you haven't watched it, you may have watched it on Saturday, but what a goal that was. That was so incredible. So,
and I think it's Koopmeiners' assist for the Pessina header as well. How he keeps it in play and just puts it perfectly on Pessina's head. Incredible. Monza, there's a few Monza fans that I do weirdly know they do exist who are quietly like, Europa League. They are only 1 point behind Lazio now in 10th place and 3 points behind 4 points behind Fiorentina. There's a little bit more excitement there, guys. Monza could be making a charge, and they're playing some beautiful, beautiful football. Really good stuff happening down there. And elsewhere, the two informed teams faced off and into one, because that's what happens. 1-0 against 1-0 to Inter. Bissek getting his first goal for the club. Every press conference I've seen with this guy, he seems like the nicest guy, just super happy. There's loads of stuff on Instagram about him and who's the other player. They keep showing off these mad shoes that they've got. He turned up to training in Crocs that were cars. You know, the Lightning McQueen from Cars. He had Crocs. So it just seems like such a great character. And the team were really, really happy for him to get the goal. It was a really nice move for the goal as well. This game was super close. Bologna really had their moments, but Inter, Adam, just able to shut them down and keep them out and just keep that machine rolling on, right?
Yeah, pretty much so. And, you know, it wasn't just in an attacking sense, because they did have their moments at the back. You know, Bologna did have their moments. Jan Sommer being a bit more savvy, should we say, on those occasions. But yeah, I just felt like Bologna just missed that kind of clinical edge. You know, Joshua Zirkzee apparently is now missing for 4 weeks. That could be a massive blow to Bologna's chances in that kind of hunt for the top four. But other than that, you know, even Bologna at the back, Skorupski had a really good game, you know, and Stefan Posch was unlucky as well. He had a really marauding run where he has a shot from distance and it goes wide of Jan Sommer's goal. But yeah, I mean, that move in particular, where you're talking about for Bisek's goal, Bastoni on that left-hand side, almost doing Bastoni Carlos. That's what we used to nickname him back in the day, when he was doing these kind of runs down the side and getting the ball in. You wouldn't associate it with the Bastoni that we know of more recently, but he's got that in his locker, Rory. And, you know, that's just beautiful. Let's hope we see a little bit of that in the Champions League this week, right?
It is a huge week in the Champions League this week. Last week was the boring one. No one gave a crap. All the exciting games of this week. Of course, it starts with Arsenal, currently 1-0 down to Porto. I'm warming myself up for a night of sheer frustration because it's going to be horrible to watch. We, of course, have Inter taking on Atletico in the Wanda Metropolitana, 1-0 up. Ben, I'm going to get a quick prediction from you. I think Inter go through, but just where do you see this game going?
Yeah, I actually can't see them not going through. I think not that it'll be comfortable, but I just think that they'll either hold it. It'll either be 0-0 or they'll get a 1-0 victory, or maybe 1-1 or something. I think it'll be tight, but I can't see a way in which Atleti turn it round. And then for Arsenal, I think it's one of those ones. It's so funny how you feel about your own club versus how other people see you, because you will be sitting there frustrated as fuck, whereas we'll be all looking at it. Arsenal are going to score in a minute. You just know it's so Arsenal, like they will score. But it'll be interesting because Porto, you know, they'll make that difficult. But Inter, I still think Inter will go through. I can't. It's bold, but I can't see them not going out. Not going through. Sorry.
I like that, Adam. How do you see it going?
So I'm going to say Inter draw 2-2, and it'll be a late equaliser from Inter, because I think, you know, Atletico will have to go out and try and get some goals in this match. I think they might be really reserved in that first half, but they'll have to go for it. And I know Atletico have got it within them to concede quite quickly after scoring goals. They've done it in this season. So I think that could definitely happen. And regards Arsenal, I think inevitably, they've got too much quality, but that's not to say Porto haven't got it within them. I'm going to say Arsenal win quite comprehensively, personally.
I'm not saying anything. Honestly, I'm absolutely shitting myself. Honestly, my anxiety levels have gone through the roof. I'm going to be working for the first 10 minutes of it as well. It's just horrible. No. And we finally get to a decider. Barcelona versus Napoli. We've been talking about this game for a while. I've nailed my colours to the mast for a very long time. I still think Napoli go through. They're still not quite great, but I think they're better than Barcelona. Adam, I'm going to go to you first. How do you see this going?
I said at the time I thought Barcelona were the better side, but now that a few weeks have happened, Calzone's got some time under his belt with this squad. I think Napoli nick it. I think they'll go 1-0 win.
I really hope they do it. I really hope they do it. Ben, how do you see it going? Kvaratskhelia screamer, right? It has to be.
Yeah, well, a lot's sort of changed for both teams really since the first leg. Napoli sort of, I know they drew on Friday, didn't they? It's, they've not had quite the, it feels like they've built something back, but it's not 100%. But I think they should take encouragement from that first leg. I think, I could see them. I think it might go to extra time. And I think they'll nick it in extra time, Napoli.
I like it. Well, I really want to see Napoli in the next round. I really, really want to. I've backed this one pretty hard, I'll be honest. There is also Europa League or the Cool Kids Club happening as well. Milan away in Prague. They're currently 4-2 up.
Easy.
That should be done, really. West Ham hosting Freiburg. This game is huge for the coefficient fans out there. If Freiburg go through, then it puts Germany in a favourable position. If West Ham go through, it puts England in a favourable position. So do it for England, West Ham. They love all that stuff. Atalanta are hosting Sporting. It's 1-1. And Brighton have to try and rescue back the 4-0 hammering they took at Roma. And of course, Liverpool 5-1 against Sparta Prague. We'll see the kids there. In the Conference League, Fiorentina 4-3 up against Maccabi Haifa. Please don't let us down. Aston Villa 0, Ajax 0 heading into the second leg. That should be an interesting one. And that is all of the Italian English affairs in Europe this week. Guys, there's been loads of you this evening. Thank you for joining us. It's been absolutely delightful. We will have a pod on Friday out as well. So make sure to check that one out. It will be out on Spotify. Hit the like and subscribe button down here if you liked it. Even if you didn't, please do. Ben, your follow and @ for all those things before we go.
Yeah, thanks for having me again, guys. Always enjoy this sort of debrief on a Monday. You find me Ben Talks Football on TikTok, and then just Ben Bowman on Twitter. That's where I do most of my work or rambling. Thanks for having me, guys. Enjoyed it.
Pleasure as always. Adam, anything to say before I let these people enjoy what's left of their Monday evenings?
Just to say, if you like us, hit us up even on TikTok. We're desperate to get to 1K, so appreciate that. Even if you don't use TikTok, as I always say, download it, follow us, and then delete the app. So that's all I can ask.
Adam will tell you I don't use it. So, guys, thank you for joining us. You can find us on Twitter at Italian Anglo Pod, on Instagram at Anglo-Italian Pod, and on TikTok at Anglo-Italian Pod. We will be back on Friday with our preview of the weekend and our review of all the Champions League action. Please, God, Arsenal, don't let me down. We will see you next time. Grazie. Alla prossima.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao.